What's up? Welcome back to the show, Rising Author Experience. And we can't have this experience without having people like Marty. Marty Osborn is not only a friend of mine, but he is someone that is truly a mentor. He defines leadership. He defines having an aura, an energy about you that attracts people like I've never seen before, to be honest with you. The day I met Marty was the day he started his book, Journey, a few years back. And we've sort of just stayed in touch over time because I've always wanted to ask him questions. He was building something remarkable with his company that he ended up exiting out of. But now I love that he's sort of sliding into the mentorship, speaking, and authorpreneur world. And I got the blessing of working on his online presence and building his brand. And he allowed me to kind of go in and entrust me with that work. And I'm so grateful for that because I've been blessed because I got to learn everything that I hope to learn from people like Marty, which is really how do I grow my magnetism and energy so that I'm constantly attracting good people around me. Marty, welcome to the show, my friend. This is going to be great.
Hussein, welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm not sure what to say. That was a pretty glowing opening, but I also have to say you exemplify all of that. Like you're really that person that, when I first met you, really said, I want to get to know this person and I want to have a long-term relationship. And we've done that.
Yeah, man, here we are. I love that, man. Like I said, you kind of leave this trail of, my father used to say things like, when someone is around you and you keep thinking about them after they're gone, it's like their fragrance, it's like their perfume, And I love that so much because you really remind me of that. And there's a few people in our lives that do that. And it's really cool when you meet them and they leave that with you. So I want to jump in a little bit about your book, your work, of course, and talk a little bit about leadership and, what leadership branding is. You talk about this very deeply. You talk about the 5 secrets of having this kind of creating and developing a brand where when people see you, they're excited to see you. And I think that's probably one of the coolest and most simple ways to define how to be and become a good leader. So in Finding Significance, you talk about redefining leadership as more than just achieving results. Can you share how this shift in perspective shaped your own leadership journey and how it might inspire other leaders to rethink their approach?
Yeah, I think, it's funny, through the years, just through work and working for different leaders, I always had a saying, I just got tired of bad leadership. I got tired of, I used to say I got tired of working for assholes. And, it was just like, to me, you didn't have to act certain ways. You didn't have to, be almighty and, condescending and, think of all those words. And so to me, that was always my quest in life was how do you find like that perfect leader? What's actually interesting was, when I talk about it in the book, but I never really had a great mentor leader, like, even school and stuff. And without getting a lot of details, but I always was a voracious reader since college. So I was always reading Zig Ziglar, Earl Nightingale, like some of the old guys, listening to tapes. I was always like, they became my mentors and so forth. And it took me a while to sort of get there. And then one day I literally decided to start my own company. And, I said, I want to build a company I wanted to work for and be the kind of leader I wanted to be. And so that kind of set me on my journey, 15 years ago.
That's amazing. Can you share a little bit about I don't know if you can technically, but I feel like you can, talk about your previous company a little bit and, the team that you built and some of the accomplishments that you were able to do by applying some of this approach that you knew was fundamental to not only being a leader, but like how a leader should be for his people and what that means for his community. I have some things to share about that, but I want to let you tell those stories a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been in the tech space, which, early on, and I actually I was talking to somebody the other day about a Hayes modem, and they're like, what's that, right? So I kind of date myself back to in the tech world, but the tech world was always kind of this, if you think about, sort of that Oracle mindset of, very brash, very hard pushing, accountability, numbers, numbers, numbers. And that's what's kind of the world I grew up in. And just things never felt right because it always seemed to be about individuals and not about the team. And to me, we either win together as a team or we lose together as a team. And that was always just something, I don't know, was kind of where I came from. And so from that standpoint, I've always wanted to be part of a team, but it always felt like through the years, everything was, just that one, when they talk about accountability and your numbers, well, there's more behind accountability, there's more behind numbers. There's a person, there's a life, there's things that are going on. There's when somebody's struggling to meet their numbers, well, yeah, you're not hitting your numbers, but what's really going on, right? What is the behavior? And to dig into behavior is very difficult. And so that was always kind of my quest, is to get deeper into our employees, get deeper into our customers, and how could I help them?
I love that so much, man. Really thinking about things from the perspective of who you're working with, who you get to work with. And work and life do kind of blend together, and people have a life outside of work.
Yeah.
And when you take that in consideration, you can practice a little more empathy. You could be more in the present moment. And I feel like when you ask, right, when we, hey, how was your kid? I heard he was sick last week or whatever, it's just really, it just shows oh, this person just cares. And that makes you then, the bosses and the managers and the leaders I've had, when they just showed that little bit of care, even when I had professors, teachers, right? Leadership is everywhere. It's not, even in friends, right? When they ask just a little bit beyond about the moment and go a little bit into the future or a little bit into the past and ask around, that makes you feel a little bit special. It makes you stand out, and it helps you recognize that this person cares. So then that automatically helps you shift into caring more about the work and about them. And it's a feedback loop, and I love that. And it doesn't always work perfectly, as you kind of describe in your book. But when it does, it's like magic, man.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful energy.
Yeah,
I love that, man.
Yeah, I think there's a word, we always struggle with, that is love. And I always said, I want to love our team. I want to love our customers. I want to get to know them. And I used to have a running joke, and I said, if you can't drink a beer with your customer, are they really a customer? Because, if they don't give you their time, they're not going to give you their money. If they give you the money, they'll give you your time. And so to me, it was sort of that little litmus test is, am I doing things that they love, is that they will spend time with me? And I, watched over and over as our competitors struggled, and, it's 5 o'clock, they'd close the book, they'd get out. They never spent time with that person. They never got to know them. And, they always say, well, business isn't personal. And I absolutely disagree. Business is personal. It's a personal game. And I think that's always been at the core. And, I always said, and again, I'll throw some names out. Some people remember them, some don't, but Zig Ziglar's was my hero. He was one of the original guys. And he always said, you can always get what you want if you help enough people get what they want. Yeah. And that was always from day one of my career, was it just rings in my head, how can I help Hussein get what he wants? And if I can help you get it, you're going to help me, or vice versa, right? And so in that world, I think that to me was the world I wanted to live in. But job after job, it was always about take care of yourself, the promotions, the house, the cars, the bags, that stuff. And that just really bothered me.
Yeah. I love that, man. You again, very much exemplify that, because you have helped me and so many other people, which is why I look up to you in a way that, helps me understand how to even be a mentor. There's a kid at this boxing gym that I go to, he approached me. He found out that I wrote a book, approached me, got the book, and was like, hey, man, can I take you out to coffee and ask you some questions about some mentorship? And it was just this happened a few weeks back, and it totally made me think of you, And I was like, man, that's so cool. Absolutely, bro. I'd love to do that. And coffee's on me. Let's go. Yeah, and And it was just so cool that he was just so open and seeking advice. And, he's very young, he's 21, and he's trying to navigate life. And you just, I'm sure you feel this all the time, right? Like, you just can't help but see a younger version of yourself in people like that. And it makes you want to give back as much as you can to them, because there is a moment in life where you get to do that. And I take that. I don't take it lightly. I loved it, and I was like, let's schedule another one. Let's do another coffee. So, I appreciate your sense of eagerness to mentor people as well. But I want to talk a little bit about your writing journey.
Mm-hmm.
I know how much your writing has evolved and how much the book evolved, because I was kind of hanging out with you as you were kind of going in and out of the journey itself and how arduous it was. Can you share a little bit about how the writing journey perhaps maybe has revealed things to you that you may have otherwise not noticed in your own sort of leadership approach, and perhaps sort of, getting more clear about what that, the idea of building a brand as a leader and how that kind of came to be. Can you share a little bit more on that?
Yeah. It's it's funny. I started 5 years ago. 2019 was sort of my original journey. Everybody, it's funny. Everybody loves to say, Marty, you should write a book. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to write a book. That's what I'm going to do. And I stood on stage in front of like 400 people and said, I'm writing a book in 2019 of May. Like, you got to commit. So actually I signed up with Scribe and I went to Austin, Texas for the 2 days with Tucker and a group of people. And it kind of kicked me off because at first I was kind of going to write I used to have a blog and I was just going to assemble them all together like a chicken soup for the soul, for leadership. But in my heart, there was something else, right? We all kind of have that story to tell. And just watching Tucker in that time sort of navigate and get stuff out, when I left there, like I was obsessed, like, no, the book I need to write was the leadership book. Like, you don't have to be an asshole. Like, that was what I wanted to tell people. I wanted to scream it, and that became my obsession. And so I started writing, I did the vomit drafts. I was doing the 250 words. I have to say one of the greatest things was when we did I guess it was the Tuesday night meetings with Hal and Emily. Like, those are like one of the fondest memories, where I met you. I met Jim Miller. I met Quan. Iona Holloway. I met so many cool things. And that motivation, like as we're struggling to tell our story and everybody's in that same boat, like I love those days. I still think about it. And I always was inspired by you. You always had cool t-shirts on. And I think I would write to you because your t-shirt would say something. So I kind of dug in, got back, and then all of a sudden, COVID hit, right? And we were trying to write. I was trying to run a business, and you kind of back off your writing. So every day I was trying to write, but I never kind of had what's it for. I never could understand. So I got caught up in the business, and the whirlwind takes over. And then my company got an offer, and we ended up turning that down, and another offer. And next thing you know, a couple of years go by, and I'm still nowhere. But I still remember the commitment I made at Scribe when Tucker shakes your hand and says, look, this is a serious commitment. Don't do it if you're not going to do it. And I remember shaking his hand saying, I'm going to do it. And so I was like, I'm going to do it. And so this year, when I finally, my contract with the company that acquired us was over, I said, I got to finish this. I got to finish what I started. And I kind of went back to, I probably had 100,000 words already written. I probably threw 2/3 of it away. But the premise was there. And then I just started back to the story arc, the journey of what a leader is, what does brand, like leadership brand, mean? And then, what are the keys to becoming that leader people are happy to see? And then the other part I really delved into is what causes good people to become bad leaders, and then is there redemption? So that kind of became the story arc. And through the last 6 months, really dug into it. And now the book is out.
So you had an amazing event just a few weeks back, and I wish I would have made it. I was out of town, literally out of the country, unfortunately. but it sounds like you've been like in this amazing groove where you're sort of celebrating and leveraging your book to reconnect with a lot of your community, a lot of people. How's that been for you? How's that? Talk to me about that joy a little bit, because you still got it. It's still kind of bouncing
Yeah,
around.
it's still kind of beaming. Everybody knows when your book's out. But, again, I go back even like 5 years ago. I mean, you think about it, one of the things, there was two things I remember about the scribe meeting. Remember the fear journal, right? Writing down your fears and then allocating. The second thing they make you do is write down your book launch. And I wrote what I wanted to do and the event and the people I wanted there. And to be able to 5 years later actually have that event with 100 people, friends, community people, had music, I usually don't get overwhelmed. I literally got overwhelmed sitting there signing books. Like it was kind of surreal. Like that magic moment is everybody's saying thank you. Everybody were telling stories. And yeah, it was one of the greatest nights, like being able to relive, to be able to do that, to be able to put something out in the world that I'm super proud of.
I love that, man. That's so cool and well deserved. And to be honest with you, like watching you go through that journey, and then how much the last 6 months or so, 8 months or so, that you really kind of put the gas on the fire, and really went to work on this thing and refined it and got it done, got it published. And what I appreciate about you is you are always asking and seeking people who can really help you refine the thing. And I know even before you were kind of finishing up your book, you were still doing that, at your work. So I want to ask you a little bit about this pressure, right? There's a pressure that I feel like a lot of authors feel and experts feel to rush through their projects. And how has your like emphasis on finding significance shaped your perspective on the importance of taking time to craft meaningful work? Because to me, that is the essence of the patience it requires to be an author. Is you have to kind of embody your message.
Yeah.
And I find it very interesting because there's a lot of authors that write incredible works, but the ultimate test is when they have to practice what's inside the book, and it usually comes up and challenges them. And I love that, because even with changing the name and sort of brand direction of your book, even though that kind of happened, you still kind of met it with grace. And I kind of want to talk to you about that, because how do you balance this pressure, and what advice do you give to other experts and authors who are still sort of working through their book and maybe going too fast and not taking their time with those things?
Yeah, it's a great question, because
Kind of a loaded question. So
yeah, well, speed is interesting, because if you look at my disc profile, and I talk about this in the book, like I'm not a super detailed person. I like to get things very quick. I do think when it comes to a book and a certain thing, like this is something we're putting in the world, and I really want it to, I mean, it's going to live forever, right? So to rush was the wrong thing. The other thing is I really believe, like in the scribe community that was there. And then when you started, scribe, everybody knows kind of how it blew up. You started the circle group, and I stayed in touch with a lot of the authors. I asked a lot of questions. I really wanted to know their story, and it just sort of resonated like what I needed to do to get it right. What's hard was you start getting all the words and you're about ready to be finished. And then you realize, like, the book cover, like I was literally stuck on a title, right? So, funny story is the title of my book always was, "You don't have to be an asshole to be a leader." And when I say it, like you get that look, you chuckle because everybody knows it. And everybody's like, that's the perfect thing. And it was just funny. My wife, our spouses know when things aren't quite right. And so my wife, like, she usually will say her piece and let it go. She didn't let this go. She's like, you don't want that title. And she kept saying, look, when they Google asshole, your picture is going to show up. Is that what you want? Because you're not an ass. Like, and
Yeah.
she was on it. And I like knew she was right. But I was like, everybody was like egging me on. Like, this is a great title. Oh, I love it. And when I had a beta version, I gave it to a buddy of mine, and he read through it. He really liked it. and he wanted to give a copy to his boss who he really liked. But he said, if I give her the book, am I calling her an asshole? And I was like, oh, he's right. Like, it's the wrong title. And my wife was right. And so I think it was the right title for the rallying cry to get me to where I wanted to go. But at the end of the day, when I really started to look at it, what was I in search of? And some people will say finding greatness, but greatness is like internal, like, I'm the GOAT or, and that was never me. It was all about how we help other people. And so when I looked at the word, it really just, I don't know, it just came like finding significance. Like that's what every one of us, and whatever we do, when we write our book, when we run a podcast, whatever we do, ultimately it's our purpose in finding significance to make a difference in the world. And that became like clearly the title. And so I nailed that piece down, but then you got the subtitle. Okay, what does it mean? And I was doing an interview with a guy named Lee Cockrell, who, if you don't know him, he wrote a book, Creating Magic, but he ran all of Disney Orlando, like 40,000 people. Most of Don's life, most of Lee's life, he was an asshole. Like, he had bottles thrown at him. He was getting all the perks and all the rewards, but he literally, a guy had such anxiety for him coming to his property. He fell off a chair, hit his head, put himself in the hospital. And Lee is like, is this the person I want to be? And he went through that transformation. And so I was talking to Lee about this, and I was always like, how do you become a leader? People are happy to follow, but I hate the word follow, hate it. Like, I wish LinkedIn, and I've written LinkedIn, get rid of the word follow because it's a one-way direction. To me, leadership is two ways. At the end of the conversation, I finally said, any last words, Lee? And he said, yeah, Marty, it's simple. How do you become the leader people are happy to see? And I was like, that's it. Like, happy is the word. Like, that's like in anything we do, in any line of work, who's saying you're the guy everybody's happy to see. Like, that's why people want to work with you. Whether you're a ghostwriter, whether my son's an anesthesiologist, and I keep telling him, Davis, how do you become the doctor anesthesiologist people are happy to see? And so that then became sort of that second rallying cry to the book, is not only finding significance, but when you do, your ultimate goal is being that leader, being the person people are happy to see. And so that just was kind of when everything, at the end, it's just being patient and, letting the spirit move in you. You start to, like, the flow of life starts to reveal itself, and you adapt it. And that what I think made the book great.
Yeah. I love that, man. Even when you, I remember when you took some time off and went with your family and you went and saw the statue of David, and even with that, you weren't really gonna do it. You were kind of not feeling it that day, and the way you described that story to me, and then you go, and of course, significance again reveals itself to you in the form of this statue and the work and the people and the elegance of it and the power of it, I'm sure. And you reflected deeply on that. And I remember us having almost a 2-hour conversation about that and how it sort of, it also then signified the cover of your book. And we talked a lot about that as well. And again, I'm just tying this into what you just said about allowing life to flow. And it's like, pay attention to the significance around you, right? There is significance in really every moment, but it's, are you attuned? Are you here? Are you present? Are you listening? Are you looking for it? Because like you said, things always reveal themselves, but it's like, if you're not seeing it, if you're not in the moment, you're never gonna see it, right? And I think that's just something that's helped me recognize that more in my work. And it's like, just be present. Everything reveals itself. Be attentive and really, like, that's the aroma, right? That's what people come to us for, come to you for, come to other people with. It's like, I'm saying something, but are you here with me? And if you are, that's really significant, because there is a memory, there's an experience, our human connection is happening right here. And when you're not, you can so easily feel that. And it's like a missed opportunity, such a missed opportunity. And you realize, at least for me, I realize how simple but difficult it is to do that. So you really have to, like, read your book and read things that bring you back to the presence, remind you to go back into the presence, which I love.
So
yeah, man.
One of the things you always say about writing is most of the time I was writing to myself, right? I'm writing things I learned. And to me, the beauty, and I say this to everybody about writing, is that it reveals itself in how we learn and we make understandings. And one of the things that really hit me was around the ego and the brain. And you asked that question about speed and so forth. And sometimes what happens is anxiety takes over because we're so worried about the future. We're so worried about tomorrow and not about today. And what happens is we get obsessed with, I got to get the book cover. I got to get this done. We become very task driven and we miss stuff that goes on. And so when we live in the present, not in the future, because you can't have stress or anxiety in the present. Like you can't, like your ego doesn't know how to deal with it. It only has anxiety in the future. And when you stay present, you start to see things. And that's when you kind of slow down. And I actually dedicated a whole chapter to the book to what I call making the unconscious conscious, like living in that moment. And as you said, I had the title, I had the subtitle. I didn't know what was going to go on the book. And I'm getting ready to launch. And I'm like, I don't have a book cover. And so I'm in Italy with the family. We're walking in the square. There's statues everywhere. And everybody's like staring at the statue of David. And I'm like, I do not care. I'm like not a stone person. And I was like, yeah, nothing. And my son's like, hey, we're going to go tomorrow to see the David Museum. Do you want to go? And I just was like, okay, it's family. I'll go. And I get in there with the headset and I'm walking in the back and you're standing there and a guy starts telling the story of David and Michelangelo and how he became a stone cutter. And I'm like blown away. Like the present, just as you look at those views, like I am just like, yeah, it's leadership, right? There's a view. I mean, this boy is going into battle against the giant. That's leadership. He's afraid in one view. He's, strategically looking at what he has to do. And there's just and that to me was leadership. And I was like, that's it. He's going on the cover. And I made some comments because some people say, well, David's overused. And I remember coming back talking to you. And I said, do you remember? I said, Hussein, man, I really want to put David on the cover. And you just you lit up. You're like, oh my God. I like, you were so excited about it. And I knew like we had something there. And so if you could see, I guess over my shoulder, which way this way is, my book, The Cover of David. And it's so important, like the look in his eyes, like that's like, I don't know, it just summed it up. And then you're like, that's it. I got my title, I got my subtitle, and I now have my graphic. And I was like, this is it.
Yeah. It's so iconic, man. And I've studied a lot of Michelangelo, or even my dad, even when I was young, he used to teach me a lot about all these great artists, and how they approach their work and what made their work meaningful. And especially when it comes to David, the thing that actually a lot of people point out or like sometimes miss is the fact that he's naked. And obviously you're not in battle naked, right? Yeah. But it's the idea of vulnerability. It's that it's vulnerability in our lives. But the more you show up naked, meaning no armor, no facade, no bullshit, that you just show up as you are, that's how you win the battle of whatever is in front of you. And my dad used to tell me stuff like that. And man, it just, when I was young, it kind of made sense, but I kind of didn't get it. You know what I mean? Obviously, now that I'm older and you like lived through these things and you're like, wow, the way I always tell people, like the way I speak here, the way I write, the way I, do my video, it's all the same across the board. And in a way, I know this sounds weird, but like, in a way, that is my nakedness. Like, I don't have a mask. I don't try to change my dialect to like fit a certain narrative. That is leadership. It's like you have to be yourself and be present, in order for people to like say, okay, I don't have to see through anything. I see him as or her as they are. And I think
Right.
that's so powerful. So when you said that, oh man, it ignited all these stories in my head. I'm like, that is freaking perfect. And of course, like he's an icon in that, you know, when we talk about brand, when we talk about longevity and story and how those stories carry weight over time, that was just like, it was perfect in how you, or how that kind of revealed itself to you and you chose that moment was significant.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And by the way, you have to tell the story on yourself too. You remember, so I shared that with you, and you became so obsessed. You like took like 2 weeks of graphics. Like you were like, oh, I gotta figure this out. Like you were so like excited about it.
I
And that
know,
just got
man.
me excited. Like you were so
Yeah.
excited. I was excited. Like, yes, like, and you
Yeah,
know, it
man.
just evolved. Like you were, oh my gosh, that was fun. Like watching those things come together. And again, I think that's the power of people, connection. I mean, again, it's why I was drawn to you, why I wanted to work with you. Is just we build on each other. Like we get excited about stuff. We're vulnerable enough to say that's not going to work. You should do this. I mean, this is all like it's all new to me. I mean, every day I was learning something new, and I just wanted to surround myself with people that, you know, could help guide me, teach me. I'll fall
Yeah.
down. I made a bunch of mistakes and
Yeah.
got myself back up. So yeah, I really have enjoyed the journey, and not only the writing stuff was revealed itself, but then the cover, the book, getting it out there. And you know, one thing you impressed upon me, I guess I never really thought about, is the game really only starts, you know, okay, the book's launched. You're gonna put the book into the world. You asked me that question, Marty, like, what's next? And I was like, ooh, like, didn't really think about that. Like, how are you going to market it? How are you going to get a website? How are you going to do these things that I didn't think
Yeah.
about that? So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you know, a lot of, and it's okay because a lot of authors, a lot of experts who become authors, right? They're writing the business book, the leadership, the culture, the work culture book, all those things. They also kind of forget that that's also a business in of itself, right? That you are kind of, you know, what Tucker used to talk about is like you expand yourself as an author, you're expanding your identity. But there's also another identity expansion, which is, you know, owning the marketing elements. And really, it's the idea of the book should be marketing you, not you marketing the book, right? And
yeah,
that was another great lesson I learned from Tucker as well and Emily. And that I'm like, okay, well, how is that done then, right? So for me, as a graphic artist, graphic designer, I've done marketing for my previous businesses. So once I started looking at myself as an authorpreneur, I was like, oh, I just got to look at it from a business perspective. So, well, what does my author website look like? What does my author offer look like? You know, am I speaking? Am I consulting? Am I offering the set of services? How do we package that into a thing? And then once we do that, now creating content gets a little bit easier because it's not about you and your book. It's
yeah,
more about the content, the sharing, the expertise, the having fun, the connecting, because now you know it all kind of plays together and is not just about you, which I think a lot of experts and authors fear self-promotion because it feels icky and you don't want to talk about yourself.
yeah.
And you know, and I get that, I respect it, but I was like, well, once you make this shift and expand your identity, it won't feel like that anymore. It'll feel exciting, which is what I want to talk about next.
Yeah.
What's been the most like rewarding aspect of becoming an author for you? Is there a moment or a piece of feedback that reaffirmed that
Yeah.
decision to
Yeah.
share your leadership?
You know, it's funny is you always battle what's it for, like once you launch it. I mean, one thing in myself was, they always say this, but people just walk up to you and say, you're an author. Like, that's so cool. Like, I always thought about that, but that was like, there's a really proud moment that says you did something that a lot of people can't do, you know, and so there's that gratifying, which is a lot of fun. Like people look at you a little differently. The other thing, and I just having books with me, like handing them out, has been one of the funny, and I told you a story today. I was sitting in a coffee shop and I was mentoring an entrepreneur, and we were talking, in the mayor of our city, who's like 28 years, like Greenville has had the same mayor. He's been a wonderful mayor. It's grown this city. If you've ever been to Greenville, South Carolina, it's amazing downtown. And he sits next and he's talking to somebody. And I was like, watch this. I told the entrepreneur, I said, you got to go ask. So I pull a book out. I sign it to the mayor, like, Mayor Knox. Here's to being the mayor. The mayor, people are happy to see Marty. I walk around, I kind of stand there, and they kind of look at me, and I said, look, I really apologize for interrupting. If this is not a good time, let me know. And they're like, no. And I said, I'm part of the community. I work with entrepreneurs. Knox, you've spoke at my conference before. He goes, yeah, I remember you. I said, I wrote a book, and I really would like to give this to you because I think you exemplify a lot of the spirit of it. And I would love for you to, put this on your bookshelf. And he got excited. We got a picture, and it's just like, it was a really, and everybody in the whole coffee shop's like looking at me, get a picture with the mayor holding a book. And, it was just really fun to be able to talk about that. And like I said, when you have a really kind of cool message, like being the mayor, being the, whatever it is, substitute that word, that was a lot of fun.
That's so cool, man. I love that. So tell me a little bit about the future. What are some steps that you're going to be taking in the weeks, maybe months ahead, maybe even the year ahead, of how are you going to leverage, because we talked about this quite a bit, how you would like to leverage your book into what kind of opportunities you're seeking out?
Yeah.
And what does that look like for a person that's, again, finishing up their book, and how they can think about leveraging their book to market their services?
Yeah. So if you think about, this is all about leadership. And if you think about, my original passion for this was, I want to root out bad leadership. I want to root out the assholes. Like, you don't have to be that. So that's what I want to do. And so to me, this book now is, what's next is getting out and speaking about leadership brand. And again, when I talk about leadership brand is basically what people say about you when you're not in the room. And some people could say, well, I don't give a shit. Well, that's a brand, and we can shape that. We can act in a certain way. And just like I talked about making the conscious, when you're mad, barking out and screaming at people, that's a brand. And so my ultimate goal is to get that message out. And I want to do it two ways. One is obviously like podcasts like this, getting out there on podcasts and being able to talk to different people and expand their universe in terms of leadership, that hopefully I'm teaching young people, that's not acceptable behavior. What is acceptable? And then just speaking, like getting out on the speaking circuit. I've got, some consulting now coming up. I'm helping people think about leadership brand, and also just really going out and speaking about it. So
I love that, man. Well, Marty, like I said, man, you have been an example and an amazing case study for me to lean on for when I talk to other people and how they should do their work, their brand, their online presence, and how they should show up on LinkedIn and things like that. And so thank you for really entrusting me with that work, entrusting me with your brand, because it was a privilege and an honor to kind of help shape what your website looks like, with your online presence, your branding, all these amazing things. And thank you for allowing me, as a young person who looks up to people like yourself who are in the leadership space, it's really cool to utilize my skill set, my abilities to help support your voice, because it is important. We need to spread that kind of message. And really, that's why I'm in this business. I found that there's a lot of people like yourself who have a significant idea, a voice, a methodology that we could all utilize in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And why not help them amplify? And kind of back to that idea, if I can help them get what they want out of the world, maybe I can get help getting what I want out of the world. And it's totally worked like that for me. So thank you for, impressing that upon me and making sure that I follow those guidelines, if you will, as a structure base.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, man, is there anything else you want to add to this episode? I think people are going to love your insights and your feelings about being an authorpreneur and what that's like been for you. But I want to know if there was anything else you want to add.
Yeah, this is going to sound a little odd, but to all the writers out there, like, I continue to talk to people who have put their books out 3-4 years ago. And one of the things that strikes me is reissue it again. Like, I don't understand. Like, sometimes people think like our story is not wine. It doesn't like age and then tap out. Like, yeah, the best writers, they got to keep moving on to the next book and so forth. But I've talked to a couple of people and I'm like, why don't you re-release your book? Like, your story is great. And I've said that to you, like, make another launch. Like, I don't know why we think, well, we launched it a while back. Like, in today's world, there's a whole new generation. And my guess is 80%, 90% of the people you're now dealing with have never saw your book or read your book.
Never.
And so I just think sometimes we have to, like, we think like it's over and I got to write another book, when in actuality, what we put out into the world, I think can stand that. And I think a lot of people can re-release their stuff. So just something to think about, you know, as I look and I read. And I mean, this is only a third of my books. You know, obviously my favorite book's on there, but but I love going back and rereading books, and I get to meet somebody and I'm always like, oh, you have a book? And they're like, yeah, it came out 3 or 4 years ago. I'm like, I buy it. Like, So don't be afraid. I think for the audience, don't be afraid. Like it's, you know, it will stand the test of time.
Man, thank you so much for sharing that. You're so absolutely right. Like right now I'm working on my audiobook and I'm adding 2 more chapters to it as kind of a secret thing to relaunch. And then I've definitely have thought about, like, in the coming years to add more to my first book, launch that while I work up my next book and launch that, right? Like, you're 100% right. Repurposing your work, because there are so many people out there that have not met you, they don't know you. And as you grow your online presence, as you grow your community, like you said, there's 100%, there are so many more people now on my like LinkedIn and my YouTube channel and all these things that don't even know I have a book, right? Because they haven't just come across that yet. And so I love that this idea of repurposing your content, repurposing your story. It's so, so important. Thank you for sharing that. It's really good.
Yeah, you brought up the audio book. I just got done 11 and a half hours in the studio. So,
when's it come out?
I don't know. It's in editing. My guess is by the time, maybe when this podcast come out, I'm hoping in about 2 weeks. But having an audio engineer sitting in your ear going through it, that was an experience. But again, to get an audio book done right, you gotta find the right people, the right coach, and that kind of stuff. So good luck with finishing yours.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Well, Marty, again, it's been an absolute pleasure. You definitely embody the Finding Significance aura. Your book is amazing. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. So thank you for putting that much effort, story, and love into it. If you're out there and you want to get Finding Significance, go to martyosborn.com. Check out the website. Check out what Marty's offerings are. And of course, buy the book there. On that note, it's been great. Thank you all for watching. Take care. Peace.